Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Can everybody hear me?
Yes, thank you.
Good. Welcome to this meeting of the Bursledon, Hamble and Hound Local Area Committee. Thursday, the 21st of January, 2021. Just to start with, welcome to tonight's meeting of the committee, which is being broadcast live and recorded via Microsoft Teams Live. My name is Councillor Steve Holes. I'm the Vice Chair of this committee. However, in the absence of Councillor Craig, who is unable to be at the meeting this evening, I will be chairing. During the meeting, you will hear from members of the committee who are on your screen now. Also present are the officers from Eastleigh Borough Council. They will present their reports that have been written and provide support for the committee. If we experience a connection problem, this event will be paused. If a councillor loses connection or joins later, I will ask them to introduce or reintroduce themselves for the benefit of viewers. Councillors, in the unlikely event of myself losing connection, are you happy for me to appoint Councillor Adam Manning as Vice Chair this evening? Please indicate.
Yes.
Yes, thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
We always welcome people to speak at the meeting, although this is a formal committee meeting of Eastleigh Borough Council and not a public meeting. Public participation during this virtual committee will be undertaken in a slightly different way. The members of the public that have registered to speak will be invited into the live event at the relevant agenda item and will be given a total of 3 minutes to speak. A verbal 30-second advance warning will be provided by the local area manager. People wishing to speak on an item on the agenda are able to do so before the debate starts. Once the debate has started, however, it is not possible to invite or receive comments from the floor. We want to be as inclusive as possible, but will not tolerate any disruptions to our meeting. And should there be any disruption, we have the power to, under the council's constitution, to remove people from the meeting or continue in private, neither of which we take lightly or wish to do. So that's the notes. So I will formally move to the agenda. Item 1 is apologies, and I believe we have apologies from Councillor Craig. Is that correct?
Yes, Chair.
Very much. Item 2 is the declarations of interest. Do members have any declarations of interest they wish to make? If so, please indicate now. When called, please state the nature and reason for your interest. Nothing at the moment. You can, of course, declare any interest during the meeting if they come to your attention. Item 3 are the minutes of the last meeting, the 3rd of December 2020. Can I now sign the minutes of the meeting as a true record? Do I have a proposer?
I'm happy to propose.
Thank you, David. And the seconder?
I will, please.
Please unmute and indicate your agreement to support.
Agreed.
Agreed.
Adam?
Yeah,
Agreed.
agreed.
Okay, anybody against? Okay, all in favour, that's carried. Item 4, public participation. I understand there's no public participation other than on the planning items, is that correct?
That is correct, Chair.
Thank you. Item 5 is Chair's announcements. The only thing, as I understand it, but Councillor Craig was going to report on, is the GE application, but I think we can do that as part of the report later on when we look at the appeals. So without further ado, we'll move on to item 6, which is the presentation on planning guidelines.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Yes, it's Dawn Errington here, Principal Planning Officer. Perhaps if somebody could confirm that they can see the PowerPoint.
It's all okay, Dawn.
Yeah, it's
Right.
okay.
Okay, I'll just get it to play from the beginning then, that might be helpful. Right, we've got some bespoke planning guidelines for this evening's meeting because the two planning applications on the agenda are both conservation area applications. So really the guidelines are specifically in respect of those. But nevertheless, all planning applications must be considered on relevant planning grounds, and the committee must determine the proposals in line with the development plan for the borough, unless there are material considerations which indicate otherwise. And the development plan is still the adopted plan is still the Eastleigh Borough Local Plan Review 2001 to 2011, and the most relevant policies which are referred to in the committee reports are 169 LB and 179 LB in respect to the applications tonight. And there's the Hampshire Minerals and Waste Plan isn't relevant for this evening's applications. As you'll be aware, the replacement Eastleigh Borough Local Plan has been through its examination. It's fairly advanced stage, and policy BU9, which is the most relevant policy, has some moderate weight attached to it now. Also, in terms of other material considerations are the section 71 of the Planning and Listed Building Conservation Areas Act, which is particularly relevant for conservation area and listed building applications, and decision makers must pay special attention to the desirability of preserving or enhancing the character and appearance of the conservation area. So that will be referred to in the report. Other considerations are government policy, including the National Planning Policy Framework, and again it has specific advice in paragraph 195 in respect of heritage assets, which include conservation areas, and it does advise that if there is harm, then there can be situations where the public benefit can be identified which can outweigh that harm, so you can consider that. Sorry, it's flipping around all on its own. Also, supplementary planning documents, including the old Bursledon conservation area appraisal and management proposals, are relevant material considerations. And then finally, site-specific details which may relate to planning history or appeal decisions, and consultancy and third-party comments and any precedent and case law. So that, again, that will be referred to in the reports if relevant. Just in terms of decision making, as I'm sure you're aware, if decisions, if the committee want to make a decision contrary to the recommendation, then please make sure they're reasoned, explained and minuted, and any reasons for refusal to be very clear. There is the option to defer to seek plan amendments if you need further information, and conditions can be applied to put controls on use and other matters if that's reasonable to do so. I think that's just all I need to tell you about tonight's guidelines, so thank you very much.
Okay, the first item is the cottage, Station Road, Bursledon, and I understand we have speakers, Mr. and Mrs. Farrier here. Do we have anybody, first of all, wishing to object?
Steve, we have to do the presentation first before we get to that.
Beg your pardon. Okay, we'll do the presentation then. Sorry.
Good evening, Chair, and good evening, members. I will select my presentation. If people, do you mind saying if you can see this?
Yeah, it's there, Rachel.
Yeah, okay, great.
It's okay.
So this is for the cottage in Station Road and is the removal of an existing outbuilding and the construction of a single-storey front extension with a detached carport. The updates for this application are Bursledon Parish have put in a do not object after reconsultation on some amended plans, and they do request that the boundary treatment remains as its original form. Also, the Old Bursledon Action Group have submitted a do not object response, and the Environment Agency have made no comment. So this is the site within the Old Bursledon Conservation Area, the Old Bursledon Special Policy Area, and within Countryside. The property lies parallel to Station Road and is a principal element when approaching the station. The property is unlisted, but it makes a positive contribution. So this is Station Road here and the station, and then site is outlined in red. As seen here on the site plan, the aspects of the development are highlighted in the blue rings. The north, the carport, is proposed with a hipped roof, and to the south, the proposed front extension that recedes back into the site. Worth noting is the proposed trees to the principal elevation in front of both developments. The proposed tree in front of the carport will be a fruit tree which has low water demand and small root areas. However, it is located adequately from the proposed carport at a minimum of 3 metres and over the required distance for a main building at 15 metres for the neighbouring property. And this has been taken from advice from the tree officer and also the council's landscape officer. These are the proposed elevations for the single-storey element of the proposal. The design seeks to limit front protrusion from the dwelling by recessing it into the site, and therefore seeks to retain its positive contribution. As you can see, the design has a gable pitch which has been amended to be reduced and measures approximately 4.5 metres in its full height. The proposal includes grey aluminium frames, oak frames, timber doors, oak weatherboarding and a brick plinth. Provides a traditional and contemporary structure which will blend well between old and new. This is the proposed floor plan, and as you can see, this provides an additional bedroom and a kitchen living area. So here's the bedroom with the kitchen and living room, and this is original. This is the proposed carport, which is a modest addition and is proposed at 3.9 metres high. As you can see, it's closed boarded with open front. And here is the proposed street scene, which you can see is an improvement from the superseded street scene, which proposed higher pitches. So this is, as I say, the proposed street scene with this pitch and this pitch here, and this is the neighbour, which is slightly set back. And this was the superseded street scene. As you can see, these pitches are slightly higher. So these are the site pictures. Here's the front of the house, and then this is how you see it from Station Road. As I say, sort of runs parallel, and this hedge here is to be retained. This is the rear garden and the driveway looking to Station Road, which is here, which runs along the side. The carport is approximately here, with the extension running through this outbuilding that will be removed, and you can see that better in this picture to the bottom right. And again, this is walking down Station Road. This is the neighbour, and this would be sort of the principal view to the green break, which is in the Old Bursledon Management Proposal SPD. This is a existing gate which is to be replaced with a very similar structure, and then this is the house with the existing hedge to be retained. This is the previously approved Lawful Development Certificate Scheme, which projects to the front by 11.8 metres and is 5.2 metres wide. This scheme would detriment the property's current positive contribution, and due to drainage works being carried out, this scheme remains extant and could be carried out at any time. So this is my brief assessment, which I have spoken throughout the presentation. However, in terms of its impact on the conservation area, it would be considered in normal terms too large for what we would normally accept, being over the recommended 25% increase in floor space and is closer to approximately 63%. But the approved scheme, as just shown, is almost identical in its footprint, and this proposed scheme tonight holds a much greater architectural value and so would be considered the best long-term proposal for this site. Therefore, the recommendation is to permit. You would have seen that the report put online was subject to Old Bursledon Action Group commenting, but they have since submitted a do not object. So the recommendation is to permit, subject to an appropriate tree planting plan, confirming the tree species as described by the carport, and extension to be submitted and approved, and a condition will be added to ensure that that tree planting is carried out. That is all. Thank you very much for listening. Any questions?
You're on mute, Chair.
We'll get the hang of this in another year. Thank you for that, Rachel. That was an excellent presentation. Now we can move on to members of the public, and I believe Mr. and Mrs. Farrier are here to speak on this item.
They are, Chair. Mr. and Mrs. Farrier, if you could put your camera and your mic on, and I will send you live, and you have 3 minutes as we discussed this morning. Nikki, in your participants list, can you still see Mr. and Mrs. Farrier, because they've disappeared? Oh no, they are still there. Mr. and Mrs. Farrier, can you hear me? Bear with us a second, Chair, because Mr. and Mrs. Farrier, as you saw earlier, were here.
Yes.
Nikki, you've got Mr. Farrier's mobile number, haven't you?
Yes, I do. I will try and give him a call.
Yeah, can you just give him a call? Sorry. Astrid, are you content with us starting to take councillors' questions while we try and get Mr. and Mrs. Farrier into the meeting? They were here earlier, so we know it works.
Yes, that sounds absolutely fine.
Thank you, Astrid.
Chair, if you want to start with that while we try and get the Farriers back into the meeting. If not, we have got their statement written down, but I don't want to do that while we try and get them in, because it was fine earlier.
Okay, we'll go with questions first, not debate. We'll wait for the debate and see if we can get Mr. and Mrs. Farrier here. So, do members have any questions? Please indicate who you are as you're about to speak.
David Airy.
Thank you.
I just thought that would give us the opportunity to confirm that the hedge along the frontage is to be retained, which I know was one of the things Tonya was very keen to see, and also to check about the roots of the proposed tree, which is to the rear of the proposed garage, between that and the frontage boundary fence wall there.
So yeah, the hedge is to be retained, and that is also on the site plan in writing. And the root area of the tree is it's proposed to be an apple tree at the moment. I have that in writing as well, hopefully by next week, which is why I've said that this can be subject to receiving that plan, but at the moment it's an apple tree, which is very small root areas, and obviously if a suitable tree was not found, then we would sort that through to get the acceptable tree.
Okay, any other questions from members?
Thank you for that, Rachel. An apple tree, I think, would be most suitable in that location.
Okay, I've got a question, Rachel. When you put up the original drawing, the plan, I didn't check to see whether the gate new gate is going to be in its current position, just replacing the existing. Can you just confirm that?
Sorry, do you mind repeating your question? I didn't quite understand it.
On the plan that you put up at the beginning,
Yeah.
there was I didn't check to see if the new gate or the replacement gate is going to be in the same location as the current one.
Yes, it is in the same location.
So it's not coming to the front of the property or anything like that. It's going to be set back.
It is where it is at the moment.
Any other questions from members? Have we got Mr. and Mrs. Farrier back?
Not yet, Chair. I think we're still working on it. Apologies.
Really go forward, can we?
No, and Nikki, she may well be on the phone to them. Have you managed to find out what's happened? Oh, they are here now, Chair.
Hello, can you hear us?
Hello,
Yeah, we
Mr.
can hear you.
Farrier.
We can't see you, but we can hear you.
Okay. I don't know. I don't know. Some of the buttons have changed, but if you can hear me, then that's okay. Do
No,
apologise.
that's absolutely fine. We can do it without being able to. Oh, there you go. We can see you now.
Got us now? Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks
So,
for that.
Mr. and Mrs. Farrier, you have 3 minutes, as we discussed this morning, if you'd like to give your statement.
Okay, well, thank you very much, committee members, for letting us speak on behalf of our application, which is a bit odd, as we've understood now, because the crux of this application is we're actually arguing against the permission we've already got in favour of the new scheme. We purchased this cottage back in August 19, and because there was a valid certificate of lawful development for the extension on the front boundary, and that was our intention, was to build that as soon as we moved in back then. But we quickly realised that the approved permitted scheme was not in keeping with the property and would ruin the street scene of the property, and also would ruin the layout of the garden as well. And we also learned a lot about the history of the cottage and very much want to preserve the original building as well as the feel of the open garden. The permitted scheme, which is a big box shape, is about 11.8 metres long and 5.2 metres deep, and it's right on the front of the boundary with a big flat roof, which as you walk down the hill from Old Bursledon, you would actually view the top of the flat roof. Realising the extension would ruin the street scene, we spoke to a planning officer. We didn't know anything about the conservation plan at the time. We spoke to Andy Ganfield, who kindly arranged us to meet Tim Dyer on site, who's the actual person who wrote the conservation plan and is Eastleigh's conservation officer. And it was Tim who kindly spent a lot of time with us going through the design and helping us to come up with a design that's before you today that would look a lot better than the already permitted design. What we wanted to do was treat the cottage as if it was already listed, so we preserve it, so we wouldn't touch the existing cottage at all. The application that we came up with is based on Tim's advice, and he has described the original application, the already permitted one, as a gross carbuncle on Bursledon, and the new one that's before you today, the objectives of the conservation area management plan will be preserved with a well-considered design of merit, and that's Tim's words from his report. The new application is a little bit smaller in square meterage than the permitted development, but it's quite a bit smaller in volume, and therefore this is the impact on the street scene. And pushing it back down the plot has helped minimise the impact of it as well. The existing original part of the cottage is very attractive and has a lot of history. Apparently, it was never a cottage in the first place. It was the boatyard's foreman's office originally. And we're very keen to maintain that, maintain the history of it. But having said that, as it is in its current state, it is not fit for modern living. It's very tiny inside. There's no room for things like washing machines, boilers. When you stand in and look out the window, the head height of the window is below your head height, so you can't see out the window. And also the way the plot's laid out at the moment, the house is not connected with the garden at all. In fact, you cannot even see the back garden from the cottage. And what we want to do is sympathetically link the plot and the cottage together. So we very much hope you'll approve this application, but we will build the permitted one if we can't get permission granted for the new application. So thank you very much for your time. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you for that. Yes. We finally got you on, and
Yes,
it was very helpful. Can I now open this up to members? Please indicate if you wish to speak by saying your name, because obviously we haven't got the normal.
Chair, to be clear, were you still asking for questions? Because if we're into debate, we need to propose and second.
Yes. Are there any questions on what's been heard? Any further questions on what's been heard? So we now need a proposer and seconder before debate can start.
I'll happily propose that we accept this and approve it.
Thank you, David. And the seconder?
I'm happy to second.
Thank you, Jane.
And if you'd like me to speak at the same time, I will.
Okay, please go ahead, Councillor Airy.
Well, first of all, the present property certainly draws your eye towards it. I had 28 years of looking across there from the train window every day, and your eye was always taken across to that cottage, and it is a local landmark most clearly, and a very nice looking one too. So I know the site well. Looking at the certificate of lawfulness approved design, I think that is, Tim was very polite about it, I thought. I thought it was totally inappropriate for that property, and I'm saying, if you don't get planning permission tonight for it, I hope you'll go back to officers and try and find a way to build something that is suitable and attractive and appropriate, rather than just build that that's already got planning permission. But that, of course, is your choice. The new scheme, to me, doesn't impact negatively on the local conservation area, and I think that's really come about by the fact that you have taken the development back into the plot, and also by the contemporary design of what you're proposing. And the contemporary design, to me, fits nicely and knits nicely with the traditional building, and I think that's really important, because that's how you will see it from the street scene. That will be its individual impact at the end of the day, if you get permission and are able to build it. But as I say, I don't think its impact will be on the street scene in a negative way at all. I'm pleased to hear that the hedge in the front is going to be retained. I'm pleased about this. I mentioned the apple tree. I think that was a good idea to have that there, and it won't have a large root structure that will cause a problem between your garage. I call it a garage, not or a barn garage, rather than a carport. That doesn't exactly fit what I think of a carport as. But that too is a nice design of thing which has a sort of semi-rural feel to it. And I think overall you've come up with a really good package for the site, and I'm very pleased to be able to support it. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Councillor Rich, you seconded. Do you want to speak?
Yes, I would like to say something. I'm Jane Rich. I've looked to the previous design, obviously, and if we can stop that being built, I'm all for that. And I think this design is very sympathetic to the area. Also, it's well screened. There were, you know, the hedge takes a lot of the building away, and with the bushes and trees, I think it will be well screened anyway. So I don't think it will have any impact on the area. I don't think you will really notice it much coming up the road and from the station. So I really do approve of this. I think it will enhance the area. So I would like to approve it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Rich. Any other members wish to speak?
If I can speak just briefly, Chair, I wish to speak in support of the motion. We've had an excellent report from our officer, Rachel Morris, so thank you ever so much for that. And I have no difficulty with agreeing with the motion and proposing that permission be granted. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Councillor Cross, do you want to add anything?
It's just that I think there's a lot of thought gone into this, and as I agree with David, the situation with the old house retaining the house as it is and the new extension. So there's a lot of thought, and I'm quite happy to support.
Okay, thank you very much. That just leaves me as chair tonight. I would normally.
Chair, apologies, you've managed to turn your camera around, so we're looking at your rear camera, and I think we're looking at your desk.
Look at my desk if you like. There we go. Yes, as chair tonight, I would normally have spoken first probably on this application, but as chair I have to sort of sum up, and I agree with what everybody has said. I know the cottage very well. I've never been in there, but it is one of 3 cottages very close together, because there's 2 on the opposite side of the road which face the railway line, and both of those have been rejuvenated in recent years in different ways, but I think that they've been improved. And the problem with the cottage is that it's not listed, as I understand it, but it is in a conservation area, so it's one of those difficult ones where you have to abide by rules, but on the other hand you're not restricted like you would be if it was listed. I think what's really important here is that it's a big improvement on the previous permission, and I would certainly support that. I like the carports, the look of that, rather than garage doors and so on. There's a lot of carports in that area designed like barns in the conservation area, so I think you're matching that aspect quite well. And I think it's also important that the hedge stays, because it softens the look of the cottage as you're walking up the road towards the railway station, and I would have been concerned if that was going. It very much lends itself to the cottage, you know, as an entirety. And I think it's also important that the new gates, when they go in, they're also set back in their present position rather than bringing them forward, and people walking up the road will still get a view of the cottage, and I think that's really important. So I'm happy to support this as well. So I will take a formal vote. If officers haven't got anything to add, I'm not sure that they will have.
No, Chair, it's just moved to the roll call, which is me.
Okay, we're going to go to the roll call. So I'm going to ask for members in favour.
Chair, I can do that if you want me to.
Yeah, okay.
So Councillor Airy.
In favour.
Councillor Cross.
In favour.
Councillor Holes.
In favour.
Councillor Manning.
In favour.
Councillor Rich.
In favour.
And that's clearly carried, Chair.
Thank you very much, and thank you very much, Mr. and Mrs. Farrier, for joining us and speaking on the application, and hopefully you'll be happy with that and you can move forward now. Thank you very much. Okay, the next item if I can just get it up on my pad, is item 8, which is St George's Kew Lane, Bursledon. And again, need to remind members that you have to be here for the whole item in order to vote at the end, but I'm sure you know that. Can I ask Rachel again to give the report?
Yep, hello again. I'll just share my screen for the presentation. Can you see this?
It just took a while. It's there now, Rachel.
Okay, great. So yeah, this is for St George's in Kew Lane and is the erection of a garden studio to replace a wooden shed and greenhouse. So there are no updates with this application. So I'll move on. Again, this one is also within the Old Bursledon Conservation Area, Old Bursledon Special Policy Area, and within the countryside. This site lies to the southeast of Kew Lane with only 2 other properties and is a generally well-wooded area. Here on the site plan, the development is ringed in blue to the rear of the garden. The studio is proposed at 3.5 metres high and 8 metres wide and with a 3.9 metre depth. The development is approximately 2 metres from the boundary and 35 metres from the main dwelling. These are the elevations, of which it will be constructed of wood and painted pale green. The proposal will have black shingle roof tiles. These colours will soften its appearance. Although it is a substantial size, this would be appropriate for the large residential garden plot and still leaves generous amenity space. It is also worth noting that the rear window is planned as obscure glazed, and this will be reinforced by condition. Therefore, the residential amenity of Advent Cottage to the rear is unaffected. And it should also probably be worth noting that on the site plan, I think the house names have changed. So this Four Winds is Advent Cottage and Fairview is St George's. So moving on to the floor plan. There is no proposed water connection and the primary use will be to work from home. A further use that would not be considered incidental will not be a use of the studio, and a condition restricting the use of the studio as a business, residential unit, commercial or industrial unit, or as a holiday let has been placed on a subsequent permission. And here are the site pictures. So this would be where the garden studio would be located. Here to the rear where this sort of pile is in the picture, and this is a close-up one to the top right picture. And then the bottom left is looking down to the main house from where the studio would be, with the neighbour here as well to the left. And then the bottom right picture shows Advent Cottage outbuilding and Advent Cottage itself over the fence. So again, here's my brief assessment, which I have discussed throughout the presentation, and therefore the recommendation is to permit, subject to comments being received from Old Bursledon Action Group, and with the alteration of condition 5 to include the restriction of the use as a holiday let. That is all. Thank you for listening. Any questions?
No members with questions? Okay, do we have any members of the public to speak? I don't think we do we?
We don't, Chair.
Okay, thank you very much. In that case, we can move to members' debate. Do we have a proposer?
I will reluctantly propose that we accept this, Steve.
Acknowledge that, David. Thank you very much.
Jane Rich, I would reluctantly again second it.
Okay, a lot of reluctance going on here, but we'll move to the debate. So, Councillor Airy, you're first.
Thank you very much. Yes, just with some reluctance that I support this, because I know there are others there. I think it would be we'd be crucified at appeal if we went to appeal on a thing like this, and probably quite rightly, as the law stands at the present time and what is development that's seen as acceptable at the present time. It would be different to me if they were going to have it as a chicken house, or keep a couple of sheep to keep instead of a lawnmower. And so on. I would see it slightly differently, but I personally don't like this form of development creeping in all over the place, and there's been a lot of it in recently of this type of development carrying on. That said, I think that some improvements have been suggested to the thing by having it the tiles painted black and by the walls painted green, and the rear window being obscured glass. That helps to soften the impact of the development on the site, and it's truthful that the site is a large garden and therefore can take a building of this size. I understand that there's no water connection, which is important, I think, in terms of possible alternative uses that might come about with this type of development. And the most important thing of all to me in here is the conditions that have been put on the development, in particular the one regarding no use for residential or holiday let purposes, which I think would be, if that wasn't there, we could well have that problem on our hands at a future time. So reluctantly, as I say, this does fit the scene there. It's the impact of it will be reduced by the painting and so on. It is distant from the property present in the long site. It doesn't really impact on the neighbours very much, I don't think. There is vegetation around with trees and so on in the gardens, and therefore I will support the application, and I'll move that we permit it.
Thank you, Councillor Airy. Councillor Rich, a seconder.
I totally agree with everything David said. I can't see any reasons that we can object to it. I think actually that it is quite a tall building and it's closer to the neighbour, so it will impact on them more than it does the actual house. But it's good now that the window is opaque. I do worry very much because there are so many of these Airbnbs about springing up now, and they haven't all got water. They use things like a composting toilet because it's very fashionable, and things like this. So I still do worry, but all I can do is support it. Because there are no good planning reasons to refuse. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And any other members? No, silence. Councillor Manning.
Yes, sorry. Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to say that I support the approval of this application, and I do endorse Councillor Airy and Councillor Rich's comments as in this regard. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for that. And Councillor Cross, any comments?
Camera. Oh, sorry, I keep on forgetting the camera. I support the David on this proposal there. Also, it seems strange. They must have electrical supply down there because of they're relying on natural light. And if electric supply goes down to the shed, that's the first thing on the way to make it more presentable for overnight stay, because what they're doing is relying on natural light. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Cross. Again, as chair tonight, I'm speaking at the end, and I probably would have led on this, but I agree with what members have said. Basically, we wouldn't win this at appeal. There's no planning grounds to refuse. I'm happy with the conditions of a check, the variations to the conditions. I think it makes it stronger on our part, because we well know that there are a number of these buildings in the area that do get converted to living accommodation. Not necessarily in Bursledon, but certainly in other parts of the borough, and it's a matter of when you catch up with them, or when somebody reports them, once they've been built and established. And sometimes it can be quite hard to tell from the outside whether a building is being used correctly or not. And it doesn't help in this case because it's hidden so well. You can't see it from the road, you can't see it from neighbouring properties. So it is one that's going to have to be kept an eye on somehow, that it's not misused. But that's not for us, that's for the officers when they get a complaint, I guess, in the future. It's been proposed and seconded. We'll now go to the roll call, Laura. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Let me just switch my screens. Councillor Airy.
In favour.
Councillor Cross. Councillor Cross.
I just turned the microphone off so they put it on. In favour.
Councillor Holes.
In favour.
Councillor Manning.
In favour.
Councillor Rich.
In favour.
That's clearly carried,
Yes.
Chair.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, and thank you for all the work on it as well.
Definitely. Item 9 is the financial report, and can I ask Ross McLean to introduce it, please?
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, members. On behalf of benefit everyone else, I'm Ross McLean, local area manager for Bursledon, Hamble and Hound. It's a very short presentation from report from me this evening. On this occasion, I only have one recommendation, and that recommendation is associated with Bursledon Windmill and to allocate our funds of £18,100 for the revenue costs upkeep of Bursledon Windmill from our existing annual budgets. In my report, I highlighted our contributions over the last 5 years to Hampshire County Council for the maintenance of Bursledon Windmill, and you can see it's slowly decreasing. And also I attended my first joint management committee of the windmill, which Council and Board has chaired, and I think certainly as a recommendation moving forward that we ensure more members from BHH are in attendance for those meetings. And the only other thing to add to it really is certainly for me to maybe formalise a more structured payment agreement with Hampshire County Council moving forward to show that we are continually reducing our contribution to this to make it self-sustaining. And I think, Chair, that's probably all I've got to add from my report. So I'm more happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Ross. Members, any questions or comments?
I'll comment if you like, Chair, rather than question. Thank Ross for his report, and I think that's what he said is spot on. We need to bring this back to one of our team meetings to discuss, I think, the way in which we go forward for the next few years on the amount we allocate for funding for the windmill. Windmill is an important landmark within our area. It's one we've strongly supported over the years, but also over time we've said to the county council we wish to reduce the amount of actual money that we're putting towards it, and that they should, it is after all county building, they should be taking an even greater share, because they take the greatest share now, but an even greater share of the running costs towards it. The windmill, before all the close down of everything during the summer and so on, was beginning to revitalise itself as far as marketing itself as an asset, and from that point of view it's a great pity that that's had to stop, because that stopped income coming in, which of course is the problem for the future. I also agree with the point Ross has made about having local members on the committee. We always did have local members on it. Malcolm was on it for a number of years, and I was, and both Malcolm and I have chaired it at different times in the past. So that it always did have local members to it, and it really, the Bursledon members should be given the first opportunity to take place on it, I think, so that the comments that come forward and so on particularly represent those of Bursledon, where the windmill is located. So with those comments, I'm happy to support the recommendations here and move the recommendations for you this evening, and also accept that the amount of reduction this year is relatively small compared to previous years, but perhaps noting the problems of finance and income for this year, that probably is a reasonable thing to accept. But for the future, we need to plan for that, and that needs to come back, as I started, at our team meeting to be able to do. Thank you.
Thank you, David. I'm sure that can be noted by Ross, and that will come to a future team meeting. Do I have a seconder?
I'll second that, Malcolm.
Thank you. Malcolm, do you want to speak on it?
I quite agree with David, because I brought it up at the last team meeting about the running down of costs. We should have been really down low now. I think it's gone a bit addressed, so we need to sort this out. And also we do appreciate the windmill. We treat it as a feature, because the planning application alongside it, it was specifically asked for not to obstruct the view of the windmill from the road. We had those houses going up the hill. So I agree with what David has said. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Okay, do I have any other comments from members?
Not from me, thank you.
Thank you, Adam. Jane?
No comment, thank you.
Okay, well, I can't add anything to what has already been said by Councillor Airy and Councillor Manning. Sorry, it was Councillor Manning, wasn't it, that spoke, or was it Councillor?
Chair.
Beg your pardon. And can I now take a vote? So can I ask, do we agree? Yes, we agree this by unmuting and signalling our agreement. So All those in favour?
Agreed. In favour.
Agreed.
Great.
Okay, and I agree that as well. So I think that's unanimous. Anybody against? Just to check. No, that's fine. So that's approved. And Ross, can I just confirm that the matter that raised by David during his comments will be coming back to us?
Yes, Chair. It's scheduled to come to the next team meeting.
Okay,
thank you.
Thank you. Item 10 then is planning appeals. Now, I did mention that we would briefly discuss the GE appeal, which was recently won by the council, and thanks to the officers that did a great job, not just making the present or representations to the inspector, but also helped Councillor Manning and Councillor House and in their preparations as well. And I think from a committee point of view, we'd like to thank all staff and particularly Councillor Manning and Councillor House for their contributions to that appeal. Councillor Manning, do you want to say something?
Well, I'd just like to echo your comments, thanking our officers and our friends at the council for all their hard work in assisting us with this case. This was clearly a complex and substantial application. There are all sorts of factors to be taken into account and to be considered very carefully. And so it was with their help that we were able to work from a strong foundation to take the approach that we did. And it shows that we're here to echo the views and the concerns of our residents in our area, many of which we share ourselves. So once again, thank you for all the help that we've had from the officers from the council. Thank you.
Thank you, Adam. Will you second my proposal to record it in the minutes, the thanks?
I do indeed, absolutely, Councillor Holtz.
Thank you. Any other comments?
Me, please.
Councillor Cross.
Malcolm. It's just that we must rethink or contact the GE Aviation or the Spanish name for the company now. I'm not quite sure about the retaining the football pitch, the cricket pitch and bowls, so that we can record that we're concerned of what will happen to those sports facilities. Now they lost their appeal.
That's a good point, and I understand you sent an email to Ross regarding that earlier in the week, didn't you? And Ross, I think you said that we would chase that up.
Yeah, that's correct.
Yeah. Okay. So if there's no more comments, I've proposed from the chair that we thank officers, and we can name them. I think it was Kitty, wasn't it, that led that, and Councillor Manning and Councillor House for their contributions to the presentation.
And Councillor Tonya Craig as well, of course.
Thank you very much.
She's played a very important role.
Yes. Yeah, if that could be done, that would be great. So I would just ask members to support that. All in favour?
Happy to support. In favour.
Support.
Agreed.
Yeah, I'm happy.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Thank you. That's unanimous. Okay, that is the end of the agenda. Just a reminder that the next meeting is on the 24th of March 2021 at 6 p.m. and it will be undoubtedly another Teams meeting. Teams live meeting.
Steve, when the meeting's closed, I'd like to ask Astrid and Laura a question with members listening, please.
Yes, that's fine. I can formally closed the meeting at 18:59. So you can now ask that question.
Don't ask the question until I've ended the live event. Bear with me a second.
Okay.